Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. And in this next segment, we're going to hear from the Canadian government as they speak to media regarding the Imperial oil leak. We're going to hear from the Environment Minister, Stephen Goulbert, as he speaks about Indigenous Services and Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu as they speak about a tailings leak and situation at the Imperial mine, the Imperial Kern mine with the oil sands and processing plant. Now, to understand some of what we're talking about with tailings, tailings is what is left over after the oil is, the tar sands have been processed, and it is the water that is left after they have pumped it through the tar sands so that they can extract the petroleum that is inside of it. So as a result, this is what we know. One of the largest toxic tailing spills recorded in Alberta's history at the Athabasca Chippewan First Nations is a dire situation. An overhaul breach of 5.3 million liters of toxic tailings spilled from the Imperial Care mine into the Athabascan watershed. The impact of the Imperial Oil's tailings pond run deeper since May 2022. 4 separate tailing leaks at the Imperial's Kern mine site have been seeping into the Athabascan watershed, leaving people of the ACFN wondering why they were left in the dark for so long. In that water, there's a lot of toxins and things that are literally in the long term poisonous to human beings. So, Jesse Cardinal, the executive director of the Keepers of the Water, in an interview, said to Rabble.ca that he is angry to find out about this. The community people literally didn't know. They're rushing around to inform the community people that there's a huge, massive, toxic spill into that watershed. Alberta energy regulators and Imperial Oil failed to inform the surrounding communities of the impending danger, and under the impact and benefit agreements made with the ACFM, Imperial Oil is obligated to address any adverse effects from industry activities on Indigenous communities. And thus they have failed to do so, and the indigenous communities are at risk from the toxins that were released from this tailings. So, why don't we listen to what minister the ministers had to say in their press briefing about the situation.
We know that many Canadian families were impacted with the loss of loved ones, and all Canadians who saw the devastation had their thoughts and prayers go out to those in that region. From as soon as the news came out, Canada has stood ready to act and support those impacted by this natural disaster. Million in humanitarian assistance support to the people of Syria and Turkey. That has included an immediate commitment of 10 million the day after the first earthquake to provide life-saving support like emergency medical services, food, and other essential items for those impacted. Canada has also matched donations to each of the Canadian Red Cross and the Humanitarian Coalition to deliver services on the ground. In direct response to an appeal from the United Nations for assistance, Canada provided an additional 20 million in ongoing support. Canada continues to partner with groups like the United Nations Refugee Agency and the International Organization on Migration to deliver support and assistance to refugees and displaced persons in the region. Finally, Canada has been mobilizing a cross-government coordinated response since day one. An interdepartmental task force was established to ensure our teams are coordinated and collaborating to deliver effective support. Canada has been and remains committed to helping all those impacted in the region. And that is why we're here today, to announce additional support to those who continue to be impacted by the devastating earthquake. I'm very happy to invite my colleague, Sean Fraser, Minister of Transport, Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, to discuss what measures his department has already taken and what new measures are being implemented to provide added support. Minister Sean Fraser.
Hello, and thank you everyone for being here, and to my colleague Ekwenderga here. It's a pleasure to be with you here. It's wonderful every time we can spend a little bit of time together, and thank you so much for hosting today's event. I also want to acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Omar Al Gabra, our Minister of Transport, as well as guests representing the Syrian Canadian Foundation. Marwa, thank you so much for being here. And the Federation of Canadian Turkish Associations, Seema, thank you so much for joining us for today's important announcement. Let me start by just addressing the challenging situation that we've seen on the ground. When we saw images of the earthquakes that took place in Turkey and Syria, the world watched with horror. There are no words that can adequately express the terror that we witnessed. To see families impacted, buildings turned into rubble, and for days afterward, to see the stories of heroes digging through the rubble to save their loved ones, to identify people that they've never met in hopes they could save lives in the days that followed the earthquakes was something that will stick with me for a very long time. To see the response of communities across Canada, not just Turkish and Syrian communities, but people from across the country to raise money to support people who've been impacted, was incredibly inspiring. Though I come from a small town in Nova Scotia, where we may not have the largest Turkish population, I met a young international student who started a fundraising campaign because she wanted to help, and garnered a lot of attention from her fellow students at a university campus nearby that were raising thousands of dollars to help contribute to the effort. Of course, in recent years, even in rural Nova Scotia, we've seen an increasing number of Syrian refugees who've landed in our communities, who've educated many of us who have been in Canada from different parts of the world for many generations on the need to continue to be good humanitarians and to contribute to the response to help protect vulnerable people around the world. I want those of you who represent or come from Syrian and Turkish communities in Canada to know that we're going to continue to do what we can to be supportive, because it's the right thing to do. I'm happy to share today some of the next measures that we'll be introducing to help continue to support people who are impacted by the earthquake, and importantly, their families who are here in Canada. We have implemented new measures that are going to make it easier for people who've been impacted by the earthquakes to come to Canada. In particular, we are going to priority process applications for temporary residency from people who have been impacted, specifically including family members of people who are in Canada today. We're using new technologies within our system to ensure that more of these people will be approved to come to Canada, despite the fact that there are ordinarily barriers that prevent people from around the world from coming here successfully. In addition to making it easier for people to come and be reunited with their families in Canada, we're also introducing new measures for people who are already in Canada that will make it easier for them to stay. In particular, we're going to allow people who are here in Canada to apply for extensions, cost-free, to remain in this country. We're also going to create an opportunity for people who are here temporarily to apply for open work permits that could allow them to stay for up to 3 years. We're also making it easier for people to move between temporary streams. So if you're here temporarily as a visitor, a student, or a worker, you can more easily transition to one of the other temporary streams that make it easier to remain in Canada. For permanent residency applicants who are already in our system, we're going to waive the requirement that you have passports or travel documents, recognizing that many people lost access to the documents that they had as a result of the tragedy that unfolded during the earthquake. And for citizens and permanent residents of Canada who are in the region that's been affected, we'll also be waiving fees for passports and travel documents going forward. And of course, for applications that are already in the system, we're going to continue to prioritize the applications that are within IRCC to ensure people who have an application in the system will be treated on a priority basis and have their applications expedited. Just before I finish, c'est essentiel de continuer de soutenir des personnes qui ont un impact avec les tragédies. Nous demeurons déterminés à aider les personnes de la région à se rétablir et reconstruire leur vie, que ce soit par l'entremise de l'aide internationale et humanitaire ou en facilitant l'arrivée des personnes au Canada ou la prolongation de leur séjour ici en toute sécurité. It's essential that we continue to treat this as a priority. There are people around the world who have family members here in Canada who care deeply about them. I hope today's announcement will make it easier for those who've been impacted to come and receive temporary protection in Canada, and for those who are already here that are Turkish and Syrian nationals, knowing that they will be able to stay, will give them peace of mind that they don't need to return home to an uncertain future. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We look forward to continuing to offer our support for those communities who've been impacted. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Minister Fraser. We know that this announcement will definitely have an impact. And now I'd like to invite my neighbor, my friend, and the Minister of Transport, Omar Al-Gabra, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Equinder. Friends, it's great to be with you this morning. Minister Fraser, welcome to Mississauga. It's great to have you here. You know, we often talk about Canada's diversity. The richness of Canada's diversity means every time any other part of the world feeling pain, we feel it here in Canada. And Canada has been a leader, a world leader, when it comes to humanitarian support and supporting each other. Canadians themselves have been always at the forefront of wanting to help the rest of the world, because it's either they themselves are from that part of the world, or their neighbor is, or their work colleague is, or their kid's teacher is. So we have this understanding and desire to support each other. But we also know this makes us a better country. This makes us a better nation. And just like we have done in the past with the port explosion in Beirut, with Ukraine, with Afghanistan, with Uyghurs, with the Rohingyas, and others, Canada has stepped up. And today's announcement, I know, offers some comfort to many Canadians who have been feeling the pain and anxiety where their family members have been impacted by the devastating earthquake. I also want to give a shout out to our colleague, Mr. Sajan, for his work. We have so far dedicated a total of $100 million to the region, $50 million for the Turkey and Syria's earthquake devastation, and another 50 that was allocated prior to the earthquake in Syria, but then was reassigned to help those who've been impacted by earthquake, and that includes matching funds that are raised by community and charitable organizations, which leads me to say thank you to community members who have rallied, who have collected donations, who have advocated for their friends, for their family. Today, you're seeing the government in action. Minister Fraser has been a minister who takes action. He's challenged with many challenges, but he's taking action, and I'm grateful for his leadership and his support. And I know, Minister Fraser, this announcement today will offer comfort to thousands of Canadians. So thank you for making this announcement here in Mississauga. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Minister, for your words. I'd like to now invite Marwa Kobia, Syrian Canadian Foundation, to say a few words, please.
Thank you so much, Minister Al-Ghabra, for your remarks and your continuous support to SCF and to our community. Welcome, everyone, to the Syrian Canadian Foundation office space. We're honored to have Minister Fraser's announcement take place here today. Just to tell you a bit about SCF and how our journey started. We started and we formed SCF back in 2015 and 2016 when the first wave of Syrian refugees arrived to Canada. As a group of Syrian Canadians, we decided to step in and support thousands of Syrian refugees who became part of our Canadian community. And since then, SCF has grew from a grassroots organization to a national and charitable organization that supports now a diverse background of refugees and newcomers. And we have, there's many lessons learned from the Syrian refugee crisis that we were able to extend our experience and knowledge and empower many different refugees to accelerate their ability to thrive within the Canadian community through our innovative and unique programs. On behalf of the Syrian Canadian community, we thank Minister Fraser and the Canadian government for the measures they have put in place to assist those impacted by the recent earthquake in Syria and Turkey. Over 12 years of conflict in Syria and now the devastating earthquakes, more than 12.1 million Syrians are tragically living below the poverty line. These numbers hit hard when I was making some research last night writing my speech. It will take substantial and sustained international support and commitment for years in recovery efforts to help the people in Syria and Turkey. We look forward to continue partnering and working with the Canadian government to ensure the impacted communities in Syria and Turkey can rebuild their lives and ease the hardship that they're going through, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema, for your words. We know that the losses are devastating, and hopefully we can do everything, Marwa, for your words, and hopefully we can do everything possible to help the Syrian people. Now I'd like to invite Seema Akan, Federation of Canadian Turkish Associations, to come and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Fraser, Honorable Al-Ghabra, distinguished Member of Parliament, and esteemed guests. It's an immense honor to address you today as the President of the Federation of Canadian and Turkish Associations and express our profound gratitude to Minister Fraser and the Government of Canada for their support. The earthquake has caused big devastation and has left many families separated from their loved ones. The pain and suffering that these families are experiencing are unimaginable, and we cannot thank Minister Fraser enough for his invaluable assistance in providing relief to family reunion visas and visa applications for those impacted by the recent earthquake disaster in Turkey and Syria. The commendable initiative was initiated by a group of immigration consultants and lawyers, along with our community members and our community organizations, some of whom joined us here today. I extend my sincere appreciation to them for their dedication and support. As Turkish Canadians, with over 150,000 population across Canada, we know that the announced measures today will help our community unite their families, stay and heal together. That said, many members of our community still have family members who are looking for a place to call home. That is why, going forward, we look forward to collaborating with our government to address specific issues regarding speed of processing, reduction and flexibility of paperwork, as anyone can guess in this situation that sometimes it may be impossible, waiving processing fees for the applicants from Turkey or Syria, flexibility on eligibility requirements for temporary visa applications, and inclusion of siblings in family reunifications. Besides the stories coming from Turkey or Syria, we have heard heartbreaking stories here in Canada. There are many affected Turkish students and Syrian students in Canadian educational institutions. They are under financial and psychological burdens. It is imperative that our government extend equal consideration to international students. On behalf of the Turkish community, the Federation of Canadian Turkish Associations would like to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Minister Fraser, to all community members for their exceptional work in providing relief to family reunion visas and visa applications for those impacted. As the President of the Federation, I pledge to continue working closely with our government and the affected families and the students to help them to rebuild their lives. Minister Fraser, your leadership and dedication will significantly impact the lives of many, and we are truly grateful for all you have done and will be doing. Together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you all for gathering. It is so good to be all gathered together once again for Nowruz. I want to thank the Liberal team first and foremost for bringing this celebration together. Leah, thank you for everything. Where did you go? There you are. Thank you for everything that you've done to gather us here, but also to Majid, to Ali, to Tony, to Paul, to Francesco. Thank you guys for everything that you've been doing. You do so much for your communities, for Canadians. We're all lucky to have you on our team. Great to have mayors from the York region here as well, David West, John Taylor, Tom Racca, and Frank Scarpitti. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I heard Rana Mansour is here too. Where's Rana? There you are. Oh, pleasure to see you again. You sang so beautifully for us a few months ago. It's a privilege. Rana is really doubling up on the heads of government this week. She's going to be at the White House on Monday night for Nowruz. I will be sure to check in with Joe on Thursday night when I have dinner with him to see how you did. I'm sure he'll be blown away as I was, because he's coming to town later next week. But most importantly, it is so wonderful to see all of you here, members of the Iranian and Afghan community, celebrating this wonderful moment. I look out and I see the Haftzin table you've put together. This ancient tradition has been a part of Nowruz's New Year celebration through all the upheavals and shifts on the course of history. And it's easy to see why. The 7 things laid out on the table represent ideas that we all value: good health, prosperity, beauty, patience, abundance, rebirth, spring. Comme je l'ai dit, ce sont des choses que chérissent tous les Canadiens, quelle que soit leur origine. Et ce sont toutes des choses qui nous donnent de l'espoir. Because as we reflect on the past year, there are reasons for hope, but there's also a deep hope for change in the world. The killing of Mahsa Amini resonated around the world. It continued in the anger and heartbreak that so many Iranians around the world, living in Canada and elsewhere, have been feeling for many years, starting 3 years ago with the downing of PS 752. Sorry, not even starting with that, but as a further example that created such a sense of loss and betrayal by the Iranian administration. And in Canada and around the world, we continue to stand with everyone who's marking and pushing back against this Iranian regime. Le Canada est solidaire des Iraniens qui veulent vivre à l'abri de toute persécution. On soutient les femmes, les écolières ou grand-mères qui mènent courageusement ce mouvement. Canada, as always, will stand with all the people who are proclaiming loudly around the world, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. I had the deep privilege of attending the Freedom Human Chain event in Ottawa a few months ago. The biggest one in Canada was here in York Region in Richmond Hill. It was a powerful moment where we all came together in solidarity. I also loved watching the dancing earlier. Thank you for that. It was beautiful. I couldn't help but think of my 14-year-old daughter who studies dance in high school, and teenagers, I now have two of them, are not always good at expressing their emotions in constructive and positive or even understandable to us parents ways. But when she dances, her emotions shine through. She shares them, she amplifies them, and she just shows a total freedom and openness that I think needs to be in us all. That's not a freedom that women and girls in Iran have. It's not something that here in Canada I think we could ever imagine living without. Nor could we imagine denying education to women and girls like what's happening in Afghanistan. In Canada, we know that no matter your gender, your background, who you love or how you pray, you need to be able to be who you are, have your voice heard, and pursue whatever future you want. Because when you do that, not only do you get to achieve your dreams, it makes this country and this entire community so much stronger. It means new small businesses. It means teachers with good ideas and celebrations like Nowruz today that bring a whole community together in hope for not just a better new year, but a better future for all. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for coming together today. I want to thank you for creating this incredibly strong community that has contributed not just so much to this community's well-being, but to Canada's well-being. The strength of the Iranian Canadian community and the Afghan Canadian community in this country has brought so much richness to this country. I can only imagine if what a relatively small number of Iranian communities have been able to succeed here in Canada, and so much you've contributed to this country, what Iran will look like in the future when everyone in Iran can live their full freedoms and pursue their full dreams and actually be free. What a country that will be, that it will be truly worth the people who live there now. It is a beautiful dream. But there is work we must all continue to do together, to be there to stand for each other, to stand loudly in moments of celebration, in moments of challenge. And remember, when we come together, to always do so with optimism and determination. Thank you for everything you do to help build a better future for all Canadians and people around the world. Merci tout le monde d'être ici. Haruz etan Nowruz, Nowruz etan Piruz.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde d'être ici. Aujourd'hui, je suis avec le docteur Ellis, un médecin et mon porte-parole en matière de la santé. Ici à Chio, c'est un hôpital légendaire dans la région d'Ottawa. Mais pour moi, il n'y a rien qui me frustre plus qu'attendre dans une salle d'attente avec ma fille pendant 6, 7, 8 ans. Quand on était en train de souffrir d'une maladie ou d'autre, avec d'autres enfants, parce qu'il n'y a pas assez de médecins et d'infirmières dans l'hôpital, même si il y a des milliers et des milliers de médecins au Canada qui sont empêchés de travailler dans leur domaine à cause des obstacles bureaucratiques. Après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau, notre système de santé est brisé. Les listes d'attente sont presque le double qu'il l'était quand Justin Trudeau a pris le pouvoir. En moyen, ça prend 26 semaines pour recevoir un soin nécessaire ici au Canada après 8 ans de Justin Trudeau. Et malgré le fait que nous dépensons plus que presque tous les autres pays de l'OCDE, nous sommes le 26e en termes de médecins pour chaque 1000 Canadiens. Pourquoi? Pourquoi nous dépensons-nous autant pour recevoir si peu de médecins et d'infirmières? C'est des obstacles bureaucratiques qui empêchent les permis de travail pour nos professionnels dans le système médical. Écoutez, aujourd'hui, il y a 10 000 médecins et 34 000 infirmières ici au Canada, mais formés ailleurs, qui sont barrés de travailler dans notre système de santé. Ils sont des immigrants qui sont déjà ici. Ils sont des jeunes Canadiens qui sont allés à l'étranger pour se former en médecin. Et ils sont des médecins, des infirmières formés dans une province, mais qui ont déménagé à une autre province où ils sont empêchés de travailler. J'ai rencontré une jeune dame il y a quelques mois qui est allée en Irlande pour étudier afin de devenir une médecine. J'ai dit à son père, mais après Irlande, elle devrait revenir au Canada pour faire sa résidence. Il a dit non, elle n'est pas permis d'être une résidente ici au Canada parce qu'elle a étudié en Irlande. Donc, elle va en Californie. Donc, j'ai dit, après Californie, pour sa résidence, elle peut revenir devenir une médecine ici. Non, on ne permet pas quelqu'un qui a fait une résidence en Californie d'être médecine ici au Canada. Heureusement, elle a reçu une lettre du ministre de la Santé pour l'inviter à travailler, mais c'est le ministre de l'Irlande. Donc, nous perdons nos jeunes ici au Canada. Nos jeunes vont ailleurs pour soigner des autres pays dans leur système de santé et non pas ici. C'est quoi la solution? Il nous faut un standard de compétences et d'examen national ici au Canada. On devrait déterminer la qualification de nos médecins par des examens qui jugent leurs compétences et non pas par des grands processus bureaucratiques. Des processus bureaucratiques prennent trop longtemps et ça aboutit à rien. C'est pour ça qu'on a des immigrants qui sont qualifiés mais qui ne peuvent pas travailler dans leur domaine pendant 7, 8, 9 ans, jusqu'à quel point où ils doivent prendre des emplois avec des salaires très bas lorsque nous avons besoin d'eux dans nos hôpitaux. Donc, un gouvernement pro-lièvre va travailler avec les provinces afin d'établir un standard d'examen médical national pour donner les permis à nos médecins et nos infirmières. Ça va nous permettre d'avoir jusqu'à 19 000 médecins de plus, jusqu'à 34 000 infirmières de plus. Et c'est ce dont on a besoin. C'est le gros bon sens. Plus d'infirmières, moins de fonctionnaires. C'est ça le gros bon sens qu'on va ramener ici au Canada quand je serai premier ministre de notre pays. Le système qui s'appellerait le Sceau bleu va répliquer ce qu'on fait déjà dans les métiers. Le Sceau rouge. Le Sceau rouge permet des électriciens, des charpentiers et des autres métiers de passer un examen pour obtenir un permis qui s'applique à travers le pays. Ça va être un standard volontaire que les provinces et les territoires vont pouvoir accepter si elles veulent. Juste comme on fait avec le Sceau rouge pour les métiers. Il y a 70 ans, les provinces et territoires ont accepté d'avoir un seul standard dans les métiers. On devrait le faire dans les professions. ça va permettre davantage de médecins, d'infirmières et d'autres professionnels. Et finalement, un gouvernement pro-lièvre va chercher une entente avec les provinces où un professionnel formé à l'étranger peut recevoir une réponse en 60 jours en faisant l'examen et en déterminant leur qualification dans 2 mois, pas dans deux décennies ou pendant des années. C'est le gros bon sens. Et nous devons le faire parce que nous perdons nos gens à cause des grandes listes d'attente qui tuent notre système de santé. Donc, ramenons des infirmières et des médecins chez nous, ramenons le gros bon sens chez nous. Merci beaucoup. Now in English. You know, it boils my blood to sit in the waiting room with my daughter as she suffers with a migraine headache for 6 or 7 hours with other screaming children when we have thousands of doctors that could be helping reduce those wait times for all of us, but are banned from doing so because despite their qualifications, they cannot get a license. Government bureaucracy and gatekeeping prevents people in our country who are trained as nurses, doctors, and other professionals from working just because they were trained either in other countries or in other provinces. Today, we have 19,000 Canadian doctors and 34,000 Canadian nurses banned from working in our hospitals simply because they were trained in another country, including advanced countries. In Canada today, we have a doctor shortage of about 40,000. In other words, if we had all the doctors that are here today in Canada but trained abroad working in our healthcare system, we could reduce our doctor shortage by half. Meanwhile, 6 million Canadians are without a doctor. We're ranked 26th in the OECD for doctors per 1,000 patients, despite the fact that we spend among the highest budgets on our healthcare system. It doesn't make sense. Government gatekeepers stand in the way, put in place massive delays and bureaucratic hurdles for highly qualified immigrants and Canadians trained abroad to actually get licensed to practice. I met a young lady the other day who couldn't get into med school in Canada, so she went to Ireland. After she graduated from the Irish medical school, she had to go to California because they wouldn't take an Irish grad as a resident in Canada. And after she does her residency in California, she still will be banned from working in Canada. So she's going back to Ireland. There we go, losing a brilliant young Canadian to a foreign healthcare system when we have 6 million Canadians without a doctor. It doesn't make sense. It's time to bring home common sense to our healthcare system by removing the gatekeepers. So today, I am announcing that a Poilievre government will work with the provinces to create a national merit-based testing standard to license doctors and nurses within 60 days of applying. It'll work like this. There'll be one standardized testing system. Within 60 days of an immigrant or a foreign-trained Canadian applying to work in their profession, they will be able to do the exam and get a yes or no based on their competency, not based on where they come from. This will mean we judge our medical graduates based on their merits and abilities, not based on some bureaucratic system or based on where they come from. It will also mean a national license so that an Alberta doctor can practice in Nova Scotia if he should fall in love with a lady there and get married and move across the country. It will also mean that the standards will be the same for people born here as those who come from abroad. And it will speed up the licensing of our medical doctors and nurses in this country. It's common sense. If you can do the job, you should get the job. If you are a doctor, you shouldn't be driving a taxi. You should have the chance to care for kids who are in great need at places just like here at CHEO. This idea is of a blue seal standard for all the professions is basically a copy of what we already have in the regulated trades. 70 years ago, the provinces and the federal government came together and created the Red Seal program, where provinces agreed to a single testing standard for electricians, carpenters, and other regulated professions, trades, excuse me. It has worked. Now a young electrician can get his ticket and work anywhere in Canada. We should do the same thing for our professions. A Poilievre government will work with the provinces, who will voluntarily have the option to join the Blue Seal standard, so that we get more doctors, more nurses, less gatekeepers. It's time to bring home the best health care in the world to Canada. It's time to bring home our doctors and nurses. Let's bring it home for Canada. Thank you, and I now turn it over to Dr. Ellis to offer more commentary as my shadow Minister of Healthcare, who's going to work on delivering this Blue Seal standard for more doctors and nurses. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Leader, and thank you everyone for coming today on this cold and windy afternoon. I really appreciate you all being here in this matter of critical national importance. We all know very clearly that there are 6 million Canadians without a primary health care practitioner. In my home province of Nova Scotia, there's 137,000 Nova Scotians without access to primary care. We also know very clearly that the wait time for specialist care is the longest it's been in 40 years, at almost 6 months. This is an untenable position, and as I said previously, it's critical and of national importance. If we do not begin to change things now, it's going to continue to get worse. And we know that Canadians are dying in emergency rooms. This is something that cannot continue to happen in a great country like Canada, and we know very clearly that we need to change it. This Blue Seal program will make it very simple for people who want to come to this country as trained professionals to be able to know what their qualifications mean in this country and enable them to get a job, so that their home country is not losing a doctor, that Canada is not gaining a doctor, and then we have a very unhappy immigrant. The Blue Seal program will solve these problems, and it will mean the restoration of this incredible healthcare system that I am very proud to have been a part of for the majority of my adult life. So once again, thank you all for coming, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you for listening today, and at this time, the federal government needs to step in and do whatever they can to help these First Nations people with some semblance of clean water. You would think. We'll see how this story progresses. Keep listening to these and other events that happen around the world that affect our human rights and the people in their communities. Please do click on that support button or that subscribe button wherever you may see it, and continue listening to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.